Welcome to Flesh and Pod, a flesh and blood podcast, breaking down weekly news and notes from the tournament scene, community drama, game strategy, and more. And now, here are your hosts, Darick and Logan.
Hello, and welcome to episode 148 of Flesh and Pod. We're 2 away. And please, everybody that's watching this or listening or whatever, please go to YouTube and like and subscribe. I did it. 15
That's how
seconds.
That's how you know we're gonna end the show soon.
That is actually true. We're only 2 episodes away from 150, and our traditional reevaluation period of our lives at the year marks is only 8 weeks away. In which case it'll be 3 years straight. I'm tempted to just say, unless James White comes on this show for episode 156, then we're done here. But I can't back that up. But yes, welcome to episode 148. My name is Logan. I am your host. With me, as always, is joining us from an undisclosed location because he's currently in witness protection. Parish Dogswalt. Chamber, how you doing, buddy? How you feeling? How's the back?
It's getting better every day. I left the house for the first time in a week yesterday.
Progress?
Didn't do much. One of the local game stores had a swap meet thing. So I just kind of wanted to go. Yeah, I just wanted to go and say hello and whatever. Kind of a fun experience. One of the people that I play Star Wars with at that particular store, shout out to Bruce, him and his fiance were there, and she knows me because she follows me on social media, knows me through casting, but it was one of those weird deep cut things because, first of all, nobody knows who I am ever anyway. We all have that running joke established for this show already. So it's just shocked that people recognize me to begin with. But she knew me from the 6-month stint I did casting Valorant. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, yeah, that makes sense, right? Valorant's a big game with a good esport scene. And that's kind of a big deal. And what you don't understand is I casted it for the first 6 months when the game came right out of the gate and there was no official support. It was all third-party TOs. And one of the reasons that I stopped casting Valorant was because in that 6-month time, I'd have to go and look at the exact number of events I did, but it was not a small number. I never got the same co-caster twice, which is not necessarily a huge deal. I don't mind casting with new people, but at that point in time in my life, that was doing something to me mentally for a number of reasons. One, that's usually pretty indicative. I always struggle with that word. Yeah. Indicative, but that always sounds
That's
weird.
not a word.
Right. Indicative of it being a very desirable, hotly contested thing to find gigs for. Right. Now, again, I kept getting them. So it's not like I had no hope or anything, but you start to feel that pressure of man, everybody wants to do this. And down the line, it's going to get dwindled down to roughly between 5 and 10 people probably working the gigs most of the time. So there's that pressure in the early stages, right? And then when you compound upon that I had not done prior coverage for a game like Valorant. So I had done some shooter coverage, but it was for Battle Royale stuff like Apex Legends at the time. So I did not come from a Counter-Strike background, did not have any intuitive pulse on the culture, if you will, that would be following into Valorant and the history. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to kind of learn the history, because obviously there was former Counter-Strike pros and things like that were coming over to try Valorant. So I'm essentially learning a new genre. So it's a flooded thing where I'm trying to learn a new genre. And on top of that, I never got the same co-caster twice. So I never felt like I ever had a rhythm. And it just it ruined my ego. And so I casted for 6 months, and then I just stopped doing anything for 3 months. I wasn't casting, wasn't streaming, wasn't doing anything. And then I got saved by Legends of Runeterra. So that got me back in the swing. But it was just interesting that the one time I leave my house for the, like, you know, first time in a week or whatever, and somebody is like, oh, hey, I know you from casting Valorant.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I can say that I was in Battleheart in Milwaukee. That was what I did in Flesh and Blood this week. And
there was a Battleheart in Milwaukee. Yeah,
there was. Yeah, you were missed. I fielded a lot of where is Charmer questions. And I said, you know, 1, your back is atrocious, and 2, they still have not built a bridge across Lake Michigan.
Yep.
And so, no, you're not doing that for a Battleheart.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Even if I wanted to just like take a flight over the pond or whatever, I was not in a position where I would have been able to do it. So if anything, I was probably meant to go on this, and this is just the new addition to my travel woes for the year. It's not been a great year for me for travel, and
it is not.
I will just come out and say it. I am a bit nervous about the month of October because I'm doing a wee bit of travel in October.
Italy and Osaka?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you are probably fucked. I'm just going to go ahead and put that out there. You are likely fucked.
Yeah.
But we'll find out. But yes, there was a Battleheart in Milwaukee, and there was also a Calling in Lyon. That was won by Pablo Pintor on Enigma Balls. And top 8 was 4 Enigmas. 1 Aurora, 1 Azalea, 1 Verdance for the uninitiated, and 1 Prism. So the finals was Enigma Azalea, by the way. And Pablo was it seemed like one of the few Enigma decks that was not on 9 copies of Count Your Blessings. So we saw some disgusting stuff on all the streams this weekend as far as decks doing things that are they don't feel great. And we saw a Count Your Blessings Enigma end a match at, ending matches well above 40 life, and being at like pinnacles in the 60s and 70s. If you do the entire math of how much life how many times do I have to kill them? The math comes out to, I believe, 87 life. So you have to kill them twice and still have work to do. If you let them go to cast, because they play 3 sigils as well. So,
or 1.5 Zen turns.
Right, or 1.5 Zen turns.
Oh, that's right, though. He doesn't exist anymore.
He does exist. It's just not good. Luckily, in most cases, Aurora's not terrible into it, as Aurora has the ability to string together big enough early turns to stress life total, and then makes things like Poison the Well lethal. Even when they're trying to back it up with a sigil to not take a giant life loss on a Count Your Blessings, the sigil sometimes itself is still lethal, and that's pretty good. Like the deck can do that. They also, yes, we'll talk about specifics later, but I don't know if you watched any of the coverage. Did you watch any of the coverage? I guess I can just ask you. You're right here.
For Lyon, I have made it through about 2/3.
Okay, so you've seen the bullshit because it was well in at 2/3.
Yeah, I did appreciate that they started the first one was Folks and Magnucci, and then telling the story about Folks is the one who taught me how to play the game, and the triple Blood Rush Bellows, I was just like, this is why I'm probably just not a competitive player, because the broadcast, they were talking about how, do you go for the third? And in my head, I'm like, you always go for the third, because you can't if you lose, here's why you always go for the third in my mind. If you lose, you'll always second guess yourself. But if you win, you want to also win by saying like, dude, I did it off a triple blood rush turn, right? Like sometimes the story trumps the outcome.
100% true. And so you got to see, and I've watched all of it at this point.
I haven't finished day 2.
I haven't watched all of Battle Hardened Milwaukee, but I did watch through Lyon. And what was your impression? Like, what you got to see the Enigma deck do the thing. You got to see all of these decks that aren't aggro decks just playing Rainbow Count Your Blessings, because why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
What's your take?
I don't know that I have a huge take yet. I've actually spent quite a bit of time thinking about this past weekend, mostly because I didn't have much else to do other than like watch coverage and I guess internally pontificate to myself about things. My initial reaction was, hey, this is why I love talking about the game and why I love casting and being an analyst and doing those things when I have the opportunity, because I felt pretty good about the fact that the meta, at least for these couple of events, look a lot like what I had expected them to look like. And the decks I thought that were going to do well seemed to be performing well. I expected KO to be good. Turns out KO is still very good. In my mind, it's probably the best aggro deck in the format right now. Now, I don't think that means it has the highest ceiling. I think that it's the best in terms of consistency, right? Like its floor and its playability, I think, puts it at the spot where it should be the most represented. I do think, based on some of the other things that I have seen, though, I think that Florian, Viserai, and Aurora, so essentially the Rune Blades not named Vincent, and I don't have anything against her either. I just think that those 3 decks have the potential to, I think, outshine KO. I just don't think they do it consistently enough, because sometimes your hand gives you Runeblade hands, right?
Yeah.
So with that in mind, KO was doing well, was well represented, didn't have the best conversion rates necessarily. And then even in some of the more top end games, it didn't look like it was performing as well as you would hope, but that's to be expected, because the other thing that I was afraid of, but I fully expected to happen, was that Illusionist was back on the menu. Zen was good enough to keep it in check. And it's not that there aren't decks that like can't get it done now. It's just that the level of consistency is gone, and you and I have talked about it, right? Illusionists are incredibly popular, so they're going to be well represented anyway. When they're piloted well, they're an incredibly powerful class. And right now, between Prism and then there's honestly a couple of different ways that you can build Enigma. I would argue there's probably like 3 solid ways you could build Enigma right now. You expect good representation just because people are going to approach it differently. So Enigma looked very, very strong. I was very sad to see that. We joke about it, right? My hate for Illusionists knows no bounds. But I just dislike it because, again, the classes I like to play don't tend to do well into it. I'll probably have to put more time in on Rune Blades now, because I don't think Assassin is in a good spot right now, because I don't think that Uzuri or Nu are great into KO. And based on the versions of Enigma flying around, I don't think they have a lot of game into them either. We did see some decent new representation, and it seemed to be doing well. But if I'm being entirely honest, the players that were doing well with it are pretty good players. And the overall conversion rate still wasn't great. And I would love to see what the matchups look like, because Nu is one of those decks, at least right now, where it's good into enough other stuff that as long as you don't go like runner Enigma to start your day, you can still do well with it, right? Like an Enigma sneaking into a top 8 or whatever isn't a shock to me, but it's not where it used to be when it was countering Zen pretty well, right? So I just don't think Assassin's in a good spot. So So yeah, I expect going forward anyway. Enigma looks really strong. I think that whatever version of Enigma can get a handle on the mirror the best is probably the one that will come out on top, because I expect to see a lot more of it, especially when we get around to Worlds. I think that you're still going to have a decent representation of KO, and then individually, I don't expect a large amount of representation, but as a class, I expect Runeblade to be in third. So I think that it'll probably be like a smattering of Auroras and Florians, and then a couple of Viscerai diehards, but then like collectively, when you add them together, they'll be like the third spot for the meta.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, so to me, after playing Aurora on the weekend, and I was very happy with my list. It was mostly just a homebrew of between us talking last week and taking some of those ideas and applying them differently and just making some changes in the list. As I wound up very happy. I ended up using every part of the Buffalo except for the Shock Charmers, because I never got paired into Wizard. But everything else came in at some point in different matchups. So it was all useful. But I believe Aurora is currently in her punk rock phase, which is to define that as creations in somewhat incompetent hands. Because I'm sitting there playing a mirror with Sam Dando, who is an incredibly good player. And we're both in the I really don't know what I'm doing spot.
So I don't want to interrupt your flow too much, but just fun fact. I haven't seen the Milwaukee coverage yet, but I did see the DM Armada video he did where he interviewed Sam, because I was curious about the list. Turns out his list is very similar to mine. It's just that I don't run blues. Like,
right.
If you swap the blues for my other stuff, it's almost exactly my list. And then we have like one equipment difference. So I was like actually kind of excited, because
we compared notes, and and I believe we have one main deck, or one actual card different. And then the other differences were in equipment. So just okay, we accidentally got to the same spot. And the difference being I was playing the Arcanites and trying to make that work, because he had Carapace for sort of that he went the 3 block, and which makes sense. I wanted to never lose to Kano.
Sure.
And that was, we discussed it afterwards, and he's just like, oh, you just never want to fucking lose to Kano. I'm like, correct. I don't ever want to lose to Kano. And so AB4, Spell Void 4.
Yep. Seems good.
That's the plan. And if it's good enough, it's good enough. It also could randomly make it so you don't just die on a Verdant's pop-off turn, but it's there for Kano. But also it's effectively the same as Carapace into like the other Runeblade matchups, because the chest is, because you're still going to prevent 3 damage with it. Like,
yeah,
and in
the 1/2 block
mirror,
and then the one spell void trigger on a rune chain or something. Yeah.
Yep. And if it's an Aurora mirror, you may be able to brick an arcane damage coming off a Flicker Wisp with it, and then you've prevented 4. Great. And you go under enough that the head's blocking 3 versus 2, so you're getting extra there too.
Yep.
And it came into play multiple times and felt pretty good.
You don't have to sell me. I was telling you where I was at on it. I was like, man, I think this is neat. So,
and then my losses were, we'll get to that, I guess, but let's finish up with Lyon real quick, because I'm seeing a lot of people, and you know how I am about kind of trusting the process, if you will, when it comes to LSS, when it comes to formats, when it comes to card choices, when it comes to printing, when it comes to what needs to go and what doesn't. I try to not join the overreaction mob a whole lot. And I'm still in the we need more data phase. I think personally that it's like anything else and you just need a plan. But it also, I understand that it feels like it could choke out strategies from the game completely. And I wonder where you're at on that, specifically talking about Count Your Blessings.
I think that we just need more time. So the other part of my weekend that I've spent with, my kind of like marinating on it, like all things in Flesh and Blood, the first thing I do is I start with like, how bad is it for Assassin? Are there any ways I can still play the class and be viable? I think the answer is probably no, but to tell you the depths I've been thinking about Count Your Blessings, I landed on, what if I bring back my Fatigue Arachne list, right? And I just only ever lose to time against like the Count Your Blessings stuff. Because I can't kill them, but they're probably not going to kill me either. And the biggest reason that I was thinking about Arachne more so than the other two is one of the best ways that you, I think, can try to combat it is to make sure they just don't hit the discard pile, right?
Right.
Because then they're not pumping it. And the best way to do that is banishing stuff. So I started with contracts now have a plus to them with the banish. In the Earth Hero matchups, obviously you're helping them turn on their hero power. That's a bit of a drawback. Not much you can do there. But if you can hit those Count Your Blessings, like if I hit with a Leave No Witnesses and they still don't have an arsenal, right? But they 3-block it and take 1 damage, but I rip a Count Your Blessings off the top, like that could have stopped them from gaining, let's just say 4 health. All right. Well, suddenly that Leave No Witnesses hit for like 4 health. You talk about the 87 number, right? That's what I was trying to think. I had arrived mentally at the same spot. There's a number more so than the life total that you have to attack. What's the most efficient way to do so? So I was like, all right, what if I do Arachne and then I just play the fatigue version and the only sideboards that I run is the I don't lose to Kano thing. So I would just bring in the full AB5 spell void for, the Widow equipment plus lantern and 1 dagger, right? But everything else matchups the same. Because, and the other reason I landed there is traditionally Arachne does like to run a heavy amount of blues, even when you are playing the defensive one or whatever, because you a lot of times when you're playing the fatigue, if they give you a low power turn, then you can lean on the daggers or you can do some other stuff. And I was like, well, that would leave room for me to just run main deck poison the well. Because like worst case scenario, it's just the blues that turn my stuff on. Best case scenario, it just magically wins me a game. So I don't know. I think that stuff like that needs to be tested. I think that there are other cards, if I'm being honest, that need to be tested. So like outside of the contract banish stuff, there are still a healthy number of generics and other cards that I don't think have been properly tested
vetted?
Yet.
Yeah,
vetted is a good word. I mean, in Part the Mistveil, we just had the one that was, it's like a cycle, right? I think the red one is a 1 for 5, but it's
Gravekeeping.
Gravekeeping lets you banish something. Seems innocuous at first, but could potentially be a really clutch generic, right? There's so the other one that was really kind of tickling me as well is, the name is escaping me right now, but it's the one where you name a card and they can't like pitch it or play it.
Chains of Eminence.
For some reason I kept wanting to put a different E word there. Chains of something else was coming to mind. Again, seems like kind of innocuous, but if you can get the hot start, right? If you can pressure them early and then when they start to turn it around, you can, hit them with that.
Barring them not being able to play the ones in their hand in response.
I mean, sure, but you're forcing the hand on that, and then you also know that they don't have any offense there either, and then maybe you can come back hard again. It's interesting, right? Like I think that there are play patterns that don't seem intuitive that could potentially get there. And I'm not claiming that I know what they are yet. I haven't spent enough time. I'm just thinking about like, when Warmongers was first debuted, I remember the community was pretty split, and I'll be, fully honest, I did not think highly of the card when it was first debuted. I felt like because it didn't have Go Again, it would potentially be clunky because, you'd either have to be on a hero where you're using a bunch of Go Again and then it's a turn ender, or you're essentially giving up your turn to maybe stop their turn. But we all know how that turned out, right? Like, turns out Warmongers is a pretty good card. So I think that similarly, there are probably cards that exist that right now feel suboptimal. That's the other thing, right? I think a lot of people get kind of stuck on what is the quote unquote optimal play, but optimal is contextual. So things that didn't used to be optimal, or things that used to produce bigger numbers, don't stay that way forever. And like I said, if people are introducing the 9 copies of Count Your Blessings and that's what they're trying to do, then you have to start thinking about, like, again, like gravekeeping, right? Like, yeah, it's like a 1 for 5 that's not super exciting, but if you get rid of a Count Your Blessings, well, now it's kind of like a 1 for 6 because that's 1 less health they're gaining on the future ones, right? So you start kind of doing that math, and I think that I don't think that there's a silver bullet. I think that's the other part, right? I think that whatever ends up being the game plan, it's not going to be like, oh, you just board in this 1 card, you're fine. And I think that's what a lot of people want. They just want like that 1 sideboard slot that's going to fix the matchup. I don't think that's the case. I think that you're going to have to do the analysis and say, how much of the field do I expect to be on Count Your Blessings? And of that, how much of my deck do I want to contribute toward beating it, right? Like, how much deck space am I willing to allot to that game plan? And that's going to be a judgment call for a lot of people, but I don't think that it's a solved equation at this point.
Also, your math is wrong. Gravekeeping, if you get the first Count Your Blessings with Gravekeeping, it's a 1 for 13.
Well, yeah, if you're counting the very first one and then they never get the health, right? So again, like you were talking about that number, right? Like, there's that 87 or whatever it is.
It takes
number.
it down to 74.
If you can start shrinking it, and again, that's why I was landing back on, like, maybe the contract stuff. If it's not like full fatigue Arachne, maybe I slide some of it back into Uzuri. I used to play a semi-heavy contract version of Uzuri, but the banish stuff from that started to feel a bit more appealing. And then, like I said, I started looking at some of the other cards as well that had banish on them, because I do think that there's a lot of potential mileage there.
Yep. And it's also, it's why decks.
Not that I want to help people out against me, but there's a lot of potential merit to running them anyway, because some of the other decks that are still floating around are decks like New and Azalea, and it turns out they like Codex of Frailty, and if you can get rid of the thing that they want to get back with Codex a lot, it might not seem like a big deal, but it'll really kind of muck you up. In fact, one of the games early in the Lyon coverage, there was a new player, and they had their 1 Leave No Witnesses they had banned, and so they had to, I think it was Persuasive Prognosis was what they were getting back after that, or they had to leave resources floating. It put them in that awkward spot, right? So there's other value to banishing things out of the discard pile in the meta right now beyond just Count Your Blessings. So it's not as wasted of a slot as people think it is, in my opinion.
Right. No, I agree. And I think that, so I think there's an inherent advantage to decks right now that can play Poison the Well for free, without having to do anything different. They can just say, yep, I can play this card. It's one of my blues. Fine. I don't give a fuck. And we saw a lot of those do really well. That they had a plan. Again, they had a plan. It's the Kano problem.
Forgive me for a moment. You can't just have a plan, or you have to have a plan. You can't have concepts of a plan.
Correct. You can't.
That's what came to mind. You can't have concepts of a plan.
No, you have, again, it's Kano. You have to have a plan going for Kano. Otherwise you lose to Kano.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same here, where you just have to have a plan to beat this. And sometimes it doesn't, you can play a deck and it doesn't feel like there's such thing as a plan. And we saw some of those helpless matchups in coverage where, they have Ward 7 on board and are at 75 health. Okay, what you gonna do? Not a lot. It's a problem. And it didn't feel, it simultaneously felt like this is bad and this isn't that bad, you know?
Yeah.
And that sounds weird, feels weird, but it's true. But
It's to me, this is the way that I've been thinking about it. It felt bad for this weekend in this moment. I don't think that it yet feels bad for the game.
Right. And this feels like it's something you can adapt, but a lot of people were trying to prey on, and we'll get into that in a second here. We're trying to prey on the beginnings of a metagame by saying, okay, well, how many of these decks literally don't have 90 damage in them? And turns out it's kind of a big number that just don't have 90 damage in them. And so we'll move to battle-hardened Milwaukee here, because I mean it was a good sized battle. It was 119 players, so that's a pretty big battle-hardened. It was won by Nick Gabler on OTK Viserai, because it turns out you can just sit there and draw circles.
Yep.
And there were 5 Viserai that were hovering around the top tables basically from round 3 on. And so kind of tail of the tournament, I went in with Aurora because Kasai doesn't have 87 damage in it, if you're wondering.
What?
No. And so you have to try to line up Poison the Wells, but when you start doing that, you start giving up percentages against other decks, and so it becomes a mid deck against the field. It's not great. Warrior was almost not having a good day. However, Bolton on full slam the foot to the to the floorboards, Bolton presents a metric fuck ton of damage in quick order against decks that don't block great. And Count Your Blessings doesn't block.
It does not block.
And so while you might be gaining 4 or gaining 5, they're attacking for 20 something. So, ouch. So the top seed coming into the top 8 in that tournament was Bolton. And they made it to the semifinals. They beat the Enigma, which was Lucas Oswald. And Lucas Oswald. You're Oswald.
Yeah.
Did
I
ever say Dalen?
I was gonna say, did I ever tell you Dalen thought I was?
Yeah, you always thought you were Lucas. Yeah. So top 8 was 2 Verdants, 1 Aurora, 1 New, 1 Enigma, 2 Viserai, 1 Aggro, 1 OTK, and 1 Bolton. Now, the fun part with this is Dagan White and Mark Johnson, aka Mo Bogsley, were playing Slapdash with 9 Count Your Blessings. And their games were pretty toxic to watch because it was a whole lot of, block with these 2 cards, keep 2 blues, load up everything, shoot you for 12. I'm at 60. I really don't give a shit what you're going to do. Rinse, repeat for X number of turns until you're dead. And that game plan was pretty good against virtually everything. But I watched Dagan get blown up by a Bolton. And by that Bolton. Then I watched Mark pull out a very close game against Levia, who then turned around and played Dagan the next round on the same list and just knew what to do now and just beat the ever-loving shit out of him because Levia has at least that much damage in it. And then there was an interesting spot where Mark was paired against the Aggro Viserai in his winning in for top 8 and thought it was OTK Viserai, so boarded like it was OTK Viserai And the first thing that his opponent does is like do some stuff and play a meet and greet. And Mark is like, oh, what the fuck? God. All right, I'm dead. And so the deck, while it was operating very well, and I saw it do some crazy shit, because there was one turn where one of our fappers, one of our listeners, he was playing against Dagon and playing Verdance amped 27, and then Aether tied for 28, and Dagon AB'd 7 of it and took 21, and then a Mind Warp or whatever behind it for 20 something for plus 21 damage to the Mind Warp, so 24. And Dagon just took that and went down to like 24. Okay. All right. And there was another one where I was watching an OTK Viserai into Mobo, and the OTK Viserai made 48 rune chants and launched them into Mark. And Mark was just like, AB 6, take 42, and then your 6 dominate. So take 48 and go to 25. And it's just like, okay, that kind of shit feels like it shouldn't be able to happen, but that's part of the planning, right? And I think that became evident when you saw a lot of these decks just either had the plan to play to get them down dead quickly before they could ever set up, or have something that goes over the top of what they can do. So like that's the Levia plan. You're going over the top of what they can do. If you are in a spot where you can play, and obviously the Viserai deck can play, either one of them can play Poison the Wells if they want to, where you can fire off 2 big swaths of room chance with poison backup, you'll probably win that game. But you got to find it. But at the same time, you have a plan. Then Aurora's plan is beat their brains in and make any Poison the Well lethal. The new that was in the top 8, I beat him in round 1, and then he won out in Swiss. So, all right, that's a hell of a run back, because in our game, the game felt pretty good to me in the Aurora matchup, and I think if I remember talking to him later, he said he didn't play Aurora again, and like that makes sense.
Yeah,
because he had one of those things where he just looked at his hand. His hand was his bonds just a Nick turn, and he sort of committed to that being his turn, and so he took 17 and dropped him to like 5, which is very much so the danger zone. And my deck still blocks, so okay. And they almost caught a corner on me because they had a viciously good Codex turn. And did something really cool there. And I was just like, oh, this is rough. But I was able to close that one out. And then he didn't lose again until top 8. So New was a good choice, right? Like, again, there's enough disruption and damage in the deck that you can come over the top of these CYB decks. So when I was watching through this event, I was going, okay, I'm seeing a lot of decks playing Count Your Blessings. I'm seeing them hovering around the top tables, but it seems like once they start getting into matchups that their plan is loose against, they're just losing. So is it that big of a deal? As long as you have a plan, is it that bad? And I kind of came to the conclusion of no, not really. I mean, just if you got to know it exists, you got to respect it or choose not to. So in that way, it's the same as playing against Wizard. You either respect it and have a plan, or you choose not to. Like, seems like any other deck at this point. What do you have to add to that? Because I know you have something.
Well, I was just going to say that if there is anything that does count against it, and I do think it is too early for this, but one of the places where I think that it's important to highlight this, I guess, is what I'll say. these being generics and allowing any class to take this identity on does make it more difficult, because one of the things where you're talking about the whole like have a plan thing and whatever, even if there was some silver bullet, now you're also kind of like playing matchup roulette on like, do I leave it in or not? Because, is this the CYB Enigma? Is this the CYB Verdance? Is this, you know what I mean? So in many ways, and I hate making this comparison because I don't think that they're on the same power level, but this was the thing that I used to say was my greatest criticism of Belittle. Belittle and Minnowism being generics meant that every aggro deck was a Belittle deck, right? Mm-hmm. It wasn't like, hey, this is like a generic, but it's got this neat niche in that, like, when those were a thing, everyone was doing it. The ninjas were doing it. The Rune Blades were doing it. Like, if you were doing anything that wasn't like one big attack, like, you were doing it. I could see that being a criticism of Count Your Blessings at some point in the future, right? Like that, I do think that is something to keep a pulse on, and the fact that it's a full suite. So, like, another thing that we've talked about extensively on this podcast is the presence of generics, right? And in my mind, personally anyway, I think that this is different from a Command and Conquer, let's say, because Command and Conquer is just 3 cards at the end of the day, right? It's not a full rainbow. It's not a full suite. And there is a lot of really good generics that exist where people don't run the full suite because it might not be the best thing to do so, right? So, like, obviously Sink Below comes to mind, but, like, let's be honest. There's been rare occasions in the past where, like, people actually ran yellow Sink Below to deal with, like, library in the early days of Prism and whatever. But for the most part, like, you run red Sink and then you set it and forget it. And while that's not necessarily the greatest thing, it's still, at the end of the day, just 3 cards, right? Like, when generics are 3 cards, it's one thing. When it's 9 cards and it essentially sets the identity of your deck, because that was the other thing that Belittle did in its heyday, right? Was like, it set the deck identity for what you built around that instead of building around your class. And I do think that even if it's not a power level problem, Count Your Blessings does potentially create a problem where you're now building around that and not your class.
Yep. That makes sense. I am not positive that it's going to warp as much as we think it will. And that's where time comes in, right? Like, you're right. As a full suite, it seems like a little much. Can you imagine Command and Conquer being a rainbow?
I mean, I can, and my hot take is I don't think that it would be like a 9 of in every deck. You know, like, there's a lot of people who would be like, oh yeah, I would always run them, and I'm like, no, like, you in most cases,
you'd run the reds and blues.
You would run the reds, maybe the blues. I was gonna say the reds and the yellows would be for KO, right? Where, like,
oh sure, but the blues are blue block 3s with upside. Like, you kind of do that. But I feel like in CC, the presence of Count Your Blessings is currently an indeterminable positive or negative. I don't think it ever will be a positive. But that's not the nature of card games. Not every card is additive. Let's be real here. I'm just not sure that it's a net negative either. And that's where time comes in. That's my take on it. But we'll see. We could definitely see a shakeup if they really want to, but I don't think they should. I think that we're in a fine spot.
I think you're wrong. We've had like one competitive weekend, so ban it. It's broken. Seen all I need to see.
Yep. Well, you have just become Twitter. Congratulations. Moving on. Now, if y'all want to sit back and talk, let's talk Living Legend. There were 119 players at the battle-hardened Milwaukee on Saturday in the Baird Center in downtown Milwaukee. In the same venue, the next day, there were 20 players in the room for Living Legend. And it is mostly because of Verdance.
I was going to say people who didn't own Kraken and decided not to play.
Correct. Most of it was Kraken's Aether Vein being plus Verdance being a problem. So for those who don't know, Kraken's Aether Veins text is once per turn, deal 1 arcane damage to an opposing hero, and draw a card for each arcane damage dealt this way. So if you amp a billion and hit with that Kraken's Aether Vein, you draw your deck. So the goal here is to have some number of rampant growths, usually just one, in your deck when you hit them to draw your entire thing. And then you play all of your discard or play or instants that gain you life. And you gain all the life. And then you play Rampant Growth twice. And then you proceed to blast for 180 plus damage. If you want to know what this looks like, friend of the show, Summer, was in the top 8 of the event in the semifinals, playing Lexi. She was fed 4 prisms, I think, which is great for her, and was 4-1 going into top 8, and was then sacrificed on camera to a Verdance doing 100 and I believe it was 189 damage. It might have been 186 damage in a turn of just here's all of it. Now the Verdance proceeded to lose the next round to Dan Johnson on Prism. So congrats, Dan. He's a Nebraska guy. I see him a lot. Good dude. And proceeded to try to dig for the combo while Dan just assembled a Prism board and attacked for 13 a turn. Here's a Herald. Here's a bunch of auras. Pass. And to the point that pretty early, I think it was, I think the game only went like 6 or 7 turns, but he used Arsenal to poison the well and sat. And eventually the Verdance went to 1 life and then played a Heartbeat of Candlehold, in which case Dan was just like, yeah, poison it and take 1. Good enough. But they never found, like, the Verdance deck requires very little setup, and it just so happened that his opponent didn't find it. But if you want to see what real toxicity is, go watch that semifinal for the PTI Living Legend event in Milwaukee. Now, in your opinion, and I hope, and I'm pretty sure it's in MinMax Games' hope, since they have a Living Legend calling in December. In your opinion, is Kraken's Aether Vein going to be the first card banned in Living Legend?
I don't know, to be honest. I think it might end up being suspended, not banned.
How do you suspend a card in a non-rotating format?
Well, you suspend it until you allow yourself to print something down the development pipeline that better addresses it, and then you can bring it back. I mean, that's the real problem, right? Is that, like, right now, there's just no tools that handle it. I'm not saying that they don't exist or couldn't exist somewhere in the future, but right now, there's no tools that address it. And so I think ban would be Like I'll put it this way: if I was them, even if the plan was to ban it, I would still just list it as suspended, to give people hope too. Because the last thing you want is to have it just like full on gone.
So my hot take is, because it's usually one spell that's amped to the moon that's going to kill you, every ranger should be playing 3 copies of Feign Death so that you just don't die. Like, you let them have their combo.
Yeah.
You take damage one time.
So I don't think that this would be the only way to address it, but I'll be honest. So like part of the reason that I say like until you can print something down the cycle, blah blah blah. I just keep coming back to we have snag for physical damage and we don't have the equivalent for arcane.
Arcane, yeah.
And like if I'm being honest, all it would take is for us to get some version of that to like rein in a lot of these combo decks, not make them unplayable, but at least create some inconsistencies, right? One of the things that, you know, Brian Gottlieb has talked about a lot, in at least in the public settings, is the idea that, you know, Flesh and Blood is a great game because there's low variance, but you don't want it to be no variance, and you do want to have, you know, some that's introduced there. And when you can have, you know, silver bullets or things like that where are draw dependent, I mean, it's still relevant. I mean, you just talked about how like somebody, you know, obliterated their opponent and then they turn around and they lose because they can't find their combo. But having it be something that's not within either player's agency, I don't think feels good, right? You don't want to go into a game and say, I only win if they don't draw the thing. You would like to feel like you have a shot. So it should instead be, I need to draw my counter. Like I only win if I draw my counter. And then I'd be like, well, okay, well, I didn't draw it, but that's still an I statement, right? I think at the end of the day, the memories that you want to make for games are I statements. And right. You don't want it to be they drew their counter or they did not. I don't know. Obviously I'm not, you know, a game developer. I haven't put that much thought into it, blah, blah, blah. But I do think that there are things they could do to address it in the future. And so if it does go away, I hope it's just a suspension until we just get a few more tricks.
Yeah, there isn't a suspended list anymore. So I'm not sure that they would go that route. Everything is just either banned or restricted.
Yeah,
but
I hope they, well, I just, I guess I'll put it this way. I hope that if they do it, that they just say it's not going away forever.
Okay. And yeah, because right now the only cards restricted are Awakening, Bonds of Ancestry, Crippling Crush, Hypothermia, Oak, and Old Starstruck Warmongers. Everything else is fair game and Living Legend. But I don't know. Like, it's rough.
It is rough.
But
and
we'll have to see.
I knew it was coming.
Yeah. Well, I sat down. So, like, my intention was originally to play in the PTI event, the Living Legend PTI event, because Living Legend was kind of fun, and I'd put some time in. Okay, I there's some things here I like. Was working on some decks, and then I hopped into a queue when Rosetta was legal, and the first thing I paired into was Verdance, and I took I think it was sub 100, but like 90 damage in a turn. And I was just like, okay. Interesting. So I'm going to need to I wonder if this is consistent, right? I wonder if this is, I just got glass canned maybe. And so I queue again and I hit another Verdance and I take sub 100 but plus 80 damage. I'm like, okay, that's 2 in a row. So I queue and I hit Verdance again, and then I took 100 plus. I'm like, fuck this, I'm out. And I went and modified my hotel reservation and decided we're not doing this.
That I mean, that kind of echoes what I was hearing from players that I really respect, especially some of the Polish guys in another Discord that I'm in. they were saying, before Rosetta was, out or whatever, they were like, hey, we've been doing some testing and Verdance is like far and away the best deck in Living Legend, and we're killing people like turn 2, turn 3 regularly.
With
like,
no setup.
Not like, yeah, well, not no setup, but not
barely
like
any setup.
It's not difficult to set it up, right? Like once you know what you're trying to do, like you can get there. And like I said, those are players that I trust. And so when they said that, I was like, all right, there's got to be some juice. And then when I started seeing it, I was like, yep, that all tracks.
Yeah, the classic 4-card 186 is nigh unbeatable, one might say. And we know that Josh has been on the show and told us that testing for an ancillary format like that just doesn't really happen. When they're designing cards and stuff like that, you don't have time. They spend most of their time on CC and draft, as they should. Those are your premier competitive formats. And everything else doesn't get as much time because you just don't have it. Like, that's not a luxury that you get. So some things like this are going to probably get missed. It is not, oh, they screwed up, bad design, blah, blah, blah. It's not that. It's just, here's this little interaction.
And again, like it's one of those things where when the Kraken was originally printed,
it was bad and no one played it.
It was bad and nobody played it, but there was also like that buzz that was created because we all said to ourselves, like, man, I hope someday there's a way that we can buff that. Like we all kind of hoped for it. I think that the problem is that what we were expecting was the ability to at most like ever give it a +3. So like imagine if like the cap on an amp was 3 and it was, there was like one card that did it and it was a rainbow and it was like a 3-2-1 thing. Like in our heads when we saw it, we all thought that like that was maybe the future and like you could threaten it. Because the reason that we all thought it was 3, or at least I say we all, the people that I would talk to about it, the idea is 3 was a sweet spot because if people brought in AB3, which was the standard, they pitch a blue, you trade one card for one. Like you still feel like you accomplished something, but it's not game breaking. We just didn't think that we would get the opportunity to amp to the levels that we have. And AMP didn't exist when the card was printed either. And so there is also a part of me that thinks that they created it with the intent to develop stuff for it in the future. And then the future time came and they were like, hey, we're going to buff all these things and we're going to do the AMP thing and blah, blah, blah. But they just, like you said, they just didn't go all the way down the rabbit hole. I don't think that it was intentional, and I also somehow don't think it was incompetence. It's like all things in life, like the truth is somewhere in the middle, and it's really just more time and resources. I mean, you and I say it constantly. What are the two most important things for us to do anything? Time and resources, right? Yep. So
is what it is. But I really think that in order to have a calling of note come December, there's something's got to get done on that. Like CYB and CC, let it go.
The November Armory kit will be a hero who gets a new generic that will say snag, but for amp.
Sure. Well, that would be something, but it's just holy shit. It went from being an interesting and to some people like had just thought that was the best format at that moment because of Zen particularly in Flesh and Blood, and it went from that to virtually unplayable in a lot of people's minds very quickly. So
it's the monkey paws thing, right? Everyone like Zen comes out and they're like, oh, you got to deal with Zen, and Zen's dominating Living Legend too. We should do something about that. Monkey paw curls and okay, we're going to do something about it. Enjoy Earth Wizard. We've always been afraid of Earth Brute, but it turns out Earth Wizard also a problem.
Still afraid of Earth Brute, but that hasn't changed. But at the same time, I don't think Earth Brute's doing a 4-card 180 damage hand. Just throw that out there.
Yet.
Yet. Moving on, we did get the contents of the skirmish kit for November, December. Looks like we're getting Cold Foil Terra. So for all you Earth Guardian lovers out there, you get a Cold Foil Terra with Terra's weapon. There's also Cold Foil Channel Thundersteps to top 4, which I don't exactly get, but hey, whatever. And then extended art rainbow foils for Harvest Season and Fry. Red only, so probably a good thing. And then the spot prizes are a full art rainbow foil Sigil of Aether and a That All You Got playmat. So I look at this and I think the only prize I care about is the That All You Got playmat. But
that's funny because I just really want the extended art Fry.
I would love a playset of those, even though I don't play that card. I could see myself playing that card.
You don't play that in your Aurora list?
Nope, took it out.
I like Fry.
It just didn't fit when I was at the end of it, but I play blues.
Right.
So
but I mean, even Dando plays blues, but he also was, I think he was on 2 Fries.
He was on 2 Fry.
In the video, he was saying that he could see himself going to 3 because every time he had it, it did everything he wanted it to do. Like he really liked it, and I have landed in the same spot. Like it seems really benign, but it's kind of nice to also just have a card that does whatever you need it to do. It does for you. Whether you need it to be an opener, it does that, right? I need it to be lightning for my fuse stuff. Yeah, it does that too. Like the only thing it doesn't do for you is block. And if I'm Aurora, like I don't want to block anyway. If I'm blocking, I've probably already lost. Like, let's be honest. So
sometimes you block.
Yeah, no, I don't want to.
That's fair. But the Fries I'm interested in, and the playmat.
Large Fries, man.
Large Fries. Give me
Aurora
those
with
large
a side
fries.
of fries.
Yep. What if it was tots? I fucking love tots.
For the record, gang, because I'm playing the blueless version of Aurora, and since Briar was known as Cheerios, just so we're all clear here, if you ever talk about my version, it is Auroreos with a side of fries.
Only reds.
Sure.
I think now that we have Channel Thunderstep as a prize here, I'm getting the feeling that the hero we're going to get is Ice. And that's when we get the next skirmish season after this is the Cold Foil Channel Lake Frigids. Now, that could not be the case because Channel Lake Frigid had the alt art.
I was just about to say, the question is, if we ever do get a Cold Foil Channel Lake Frigid, does it have the cute fox or not? Which version is the Cold Foil version? That's the question.
What does the fox say? But that's 15 years ago now, something like that.
Don't do that to me. No, it can't be because
Stark
is 11 and he loved that song when he was a kid, and I know that we didn't keep playing it for 2 or 3 years after, so it's probably like 11 or 12.
All right, let's look. What does the fox say?
I'm gonna go with 12.
Song by Ilvis. 11 was when it was trending. So, yep, 11 years. So you're right, 11.
Yeah, don't take those 3 years away from me. All right.
You really want them? Okay.
I really do. I need it, man. I'm running out of time.
All right.
Time and resources. Here we go again. Moving on, we only have one listener question and then something that Charmer puts in the notes to talk about, which fine. This is from Johnny Pastrami. Now, I caught shit in Milwaukee from Johnny Pastrami because I, for whatever reason, forgot to put this question in listener questions.
was not malicious, was not intentional, but I still ate shit. So here we go. We're going to go through this. Tell me more about ballroom dancing. I am wildly curious now. That's the question. Well, one, there is no question in your question. And two, what is there to say? I mean,
maybe the inflection was missing. Maybe it's like the Ron Burgundy thing. Tell me more about ballroom dancing. I am wildly curious now.
I mean, that could be ballroom dancing. So when I was in high school, many years ago at this point, we had the ability to not go to phys ed classes during the day. And I was taking college classes in high school. So, and at the college, like the community college locally. So I would take every opportunity to not be in the high school. I had a lot of ways of doing that. Different stories for different times. Not going to put that on the air. But one of those ways was to not have a phys ed class. And so instead you could take, for like 2 months, every Sunday night, you would have ballroom dancing. And then you would travel to ballrooms throughout the Midwest and go to ballrooms. And it was fucking awesome. So your boy learned ballroom dancing when I was in high school, and also traveled around the Midwest doing that. So I have a soft spot for ballroom dancing, it turns out. And a little tango, a little foxtrot, a little waltz, a little swing, a little it's like Mambo number 5, but with dancing. Wait, that is Mambo number 5, because that's a dance. Also Mambo and salsa. All
and chips.
Chips. Are you talking about the California Highway Patrol or? Okay, just making sure. But that's ballroom dance. Like ballroom dancing is a blast. It's a lot of fun. You go to a lot of interesting places. I'm randomly a member of the British Buddy Holly Society because of ballroom dancing, and a few other like crazy things. So yeah, it's a I think that anybody that has a desire and a curiosity should take the time and do a little ballroom dancing. It's never going to hurt you. Okay, sorry. If you're named Darick Oswald, spelled Darick, don't fucking do it, because you'll like tear your nutsack on the split in your trousers, catches it wrong or something, because that's your luck. But that's like, I don't think that that's how it happened, because ballroom dancing isn't mundane enough. You need something far more mundane than ballroom dancing to injure yourself.
Yeah, that tracks.
So I think you'd be safe doing it, personally. Now, opening the door for somebody, yeah, you're probably going to like tear an elbow.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't do that. Moving on to the can we talk about this? So back in the Stone Ages of this show, like the first 30 episodes or so, we had a segment that was Reddit question of the week. Now, how far back do I have to go to find a Reddit question of the week? Let's find out. That's the best part of having one doc with all this shit in it. Okay, so Reddit thread of the week was present in episode 28,
30.
29.
Episode 30. If you control F for Reddit, the first hit,
I was dead on.
Episode 30.
I was dead on. Episode 30 was the last one. Fuck God, I can't believe I remembered that shit. Any rate, I despise Reddit. And the Reddit thread of the week died because there was really nothing on Reddit. And like the Flesh and Blood Reddit was just nothing worth talking about a lot of the time. And so it just kind of died off. But Charmer pulled something up from and
Yeah, go ahead.
Cheese Dreams 69. I would like to point out that Dreams with a Z.
Yep. So you know it's going to be a banger question.
Yeah, no, it's great.
Let me pull this up.
God damn it. Pick doesn't capture the foiling,
No.
but it's cold
What's the title? What's the title? Because that's the question.
Why though?
So Cheese Dreams 69 would like to ask the Flesh and Blood community.
Though?
But why though? That's where we're starting.
Who decided it would be a good idea to make a literal piece of trash included in packs to be cold foiled? It's bad enough they copied MTG's strategy of including completely useless inserts in the packs instead of just more tokens. Why in the wide world of sports they decided it was a good idea to make them a possible cold foil? Even worse, this is worth more than 90% of actual game pieces that are cold foil, like rare and common equipments. I can't wrap my head around why anyone thought this was a good idea. I just opened the worst case in the history of the game, maybe $150 in value, and this is one of the most expensive cards I opened. Ultra feels bad. It's exhausting.
So I wanted to talk about this because I thought this would be a great segue into how our public school system is failing us.
Yep. Go on.
So, in my attempt, maybe, I don't know, maybe Cheese Dreams 69 is a listener. So maybe they're listening, or maybe their friend knows who we are and they'll forward this answer. But I will do my best to answer your question. So, first of all, who decided it would be a good idea to make a literal piece of trash included in packs to be cold foiled? Well, to answer your question, that would be Legend Story Studios. They're the people who make the game, so it was their decision. Now, to elaborate further, as you allude to later on, and don't worry, we'll get to that, they've been putting literal pieces of trash in packs as cold foils since the game first came out. It's called the Commons. And I know that might be hard to hear for some people, but you either are like me and you still love getting the common cold foils anyway, or you're somebody who says like, hey, it's a Runaways and I don't care, right? One of two people. I actually like, and I keep at least one of all my common cold foil equipment. I like to bring them out for common or whatever. But if you are somebody who is of this viewpoint where you're just looking for value, the commons have been trash for a long time. Now, let's go on though. It's bad enough they copied MTG's strategy of including completely useless inserts in the packs instead of just more tokens. Two things here. First, they're not useless. I'm sorry that you cannot think of a way to use them, but that does not derive them of actual uses. Some people like to put these on the spines of binders because they are collectors. Some people like to put them on the front page, right? So imagine that you've got your master set and you've got a binder for every set and you want to do something cheeky and you're like, hey, you know what, for Rosetta, when I open my binder, I want to have the full art of Verdance as the front page or whatever, just as a fun thing, right? Like those inserts allow people to enjoy the collectability side of card games. And I do think that that's important. So there are definitely uses. Again, I'm sorry that you are unable to come up with that on your own, but they do exist. So I'm here to help you out. Now, the other bit, right, where you say, instead of just more tokens, well, let me tell you, if your complaint is that you're receiving trash in your packs, I don't really see the argument as a good one when you're like, I just want more tokens, because I can assure you, sir, madam, non-binary Cheese Dreams, whatever
Dreams 69.
Yeah. I assure you, you're not stockpiling all your tokens at home either. I assure you that you would not be happy with not getting this and instead getting more tokens. Like the idea of just being like, why wouldn't I just get more tokens is just absurd to me, because no Flesh and Blood player in the history of me playing this game has ever said, man, I just really need more tokens. It'd be cool if they put a third one in the pack. So like, let's be honest here. It's a bad faith argument. All right. So continuing further, even worse, somehow worse than these already amazing points thus far. Even worse, this is worth more than 90% of actual game pieces that are cold foil, like rare and common equipments. Well, let's put on our critical thinking cap. I got mine right here, just to make Logan jealous. This is my thinking cap. For our audio listeners, it's the Legend Story Studios cap and callback. They're the ones who make these decisions. Our critical thinking cap says, if this is worth more than 90% of the other things, it's probably something sought after and thus not useless. It's probably something that somebody thought, hey, it's a good idea, a good decision by them to put these in because people want them enough to pay more for them than actual game pieces. That seems like a logical conclusion to arrive to. Now, you do follow this up with, I cannot wrap my head around why anyone thought this was a good idea. So I do appreciate the honesty. Hopefully this has been illuminating for you. I hope that this elucidates the solutions or answers a bit. Just says, I just opened the worst case in the history of this game, maybe $100 in value. And this is one of the most expensive cards I open. Again, one of the most expensive in an entire case. I just don't believe that would be the case if it was as useless and as bad of a decision. I have opened Fables, which are actual game pieces that are of a rarer distribution that are worth less than that card that you are complaining about. So again, something was probably a good decision there. But also, and this is where I would like to end, if you're going into a case hoping for value, at some point you have to acknowledge the same things that I have acknowledged, the same things that I know Logan has acknowledged, and that is you only open cases to gamble. Just period, full stop. If you are looking for value, you buy singles. If you're trying to gain value, then you take out an extensive trade binder to an event, and then you spend the weekend wheeling and dealing to find your margins. But you do not open sealed product and expect to break even. I know that would be an amazing world to live in, but it's just not reality. It hasn't been for a long time in TCGs. So,
ever, really.
Yeah. Understand that it is a gambling thing, and this scratch off ticket just didn't hit. And the parts it did hit on just aren't for you. So I'm sorry. If you do prefer tokens, because I know how
I
much
will
you
send
said
you a
you
5K
wanted,
box of tokens.
I was going to offer, I will trade you tokens for this because clearly you don't value this. You think it's useless. I can find a use for it. I would trade tokens. Hell, I'll be nice. I'll trade some of those rare and common cold foil equipment because I hold on to mine again. So I've got them, and I would be happy to make some trades. But I do hope that this was helpful to Cheese Dreams 69. And I'm very glad that I could go to the depths of our reservoir and bring back the Reddit thread of the week. I hope you all enjoyed this.
I'm never doing this again. Just gonna throw that out there. The last 100 and
I'm gonna start my own series. I'm gonna fire it up. I'm gonna call it No Stupid Questions, and it will just be every video will be me answering a question.
I went 118 weeks without having to deal with this with fucking Reddit on this show, and then you're just like, you know what? Cheese Dreams 69.
I've been in a lot of I've been in a lot of pain for like 8 days. Okay,
and now I am. You shared it with me. You.
I needed to share it. I needed to vent, man.
Ooh,
all right.
I get you. Okay. All right. I'm going to close up shop on Cheese Dreams 69 now.
Don't worry, Mara. I won't tell people that's your username.
Okay. Let's go back up the 207 pages of notes that are on this doc right now. I'm wondering if any guest of ours, like from, the annals of that have been sent the link to this document, have ever just wondered what's it like? Go back in time. They haven't,
but I can guarantee you right now, not right now as in recording, but right now is in the moment they're listening to it. Josh is opening it to start, because if there's anybody who would go through 207 pages, true. It's him.
Yeah, like he would get to go see. Let's go down here to the very first episode. when, God, forever ago. Episode 0's trailer script is on here.
Yeah. You know what my favorite line from this is?
What's that?
Some type of greeting.
Some type of greeting. Yeah. And then, the Reddit thread of the week was a guy trading a carrion husk at $145, by the way, into his LGS for two $25 playmats and 5 Crucible packs. And
you know what? It was probably worth it because there were no cold foil inserts. There was only real usable game pieces in that trade.
Yeah. And that was the episode that I brought up that we should have, all jokes aside,
like all sarcasm aside, obviously that was meant to be a comedic bit. If you really are listening, Cheese Dream 69, the real message that I would send to you is this. Not everything is for everybody, and some of us do enjoy that. So like, just don't yuck somebody else's yum.
That's
like,
true.
That's it, mate. Like not everything is going to resonate with everybody, and that's okay.
So yeah, I mean, there is. Let's stop at a random page and find a listener question.
All right, I'm going to go to page 1.
I'm at 121. So.
Oh, that's funny. I was trying to go to 131.
From Big Lou. Oh man, there's some good ones in here. What are some ideas or products, past or present, LSS can copy from other card games that you would like to see implemented? Personally, I'd love to see them take on old Magic Invitational idea and let the winners design their own card and have their likenesses on it. Spoiler alert, that fucking happened. And that was episode 58. So that was 90 weeks ago for people counting. That was Darick's first episode solo with me.
Probably
nope,
for
57
solo.
57 was.
Yeah.
It was one off. Okay.
49 should be my first on the show because it was just before your big 50th. I remember that.
Yep. 49 was Yumi and Jordan.
Yeah, because Abby hates me. She won't do a show with me. She told me that in person.
That's accurate. But
just kidding. I love you, Abby.
I think we're going to probably do that for 156 is we're going to go back and start pulling questions from old shows and doing them like they're current, because I feel like 156 is going to go long. Just throwing that out there. But it's like going to be weird because I think it's right when you're in Osaka. So this is 49, 50, 51, 52, 53. No, it won't be. 54, 55, 56. 156 will be coming back from Portland, actually. In November.
I really wish I could go to that.
Well, of course you can.
I just, unless I like make money at Worlds somehow, I probably can't.
Well, here's to hoping.
Because turns out travel's expensive, and
you're not wrong.
Almost back-to-back Italy and then Japan trips have really stressed out the old wallet. But I mean, I would love to go to Portland, and if I'm being honest, that's one that, just like when I took her to Barcelona, I would love to take Sophie, because the last time that her and I were in Portland, it was like the most fun she's had within the United States border, I would say. So she helped save somebody who OD'd. And then when he got up and was walking around again, he'd forgot that we even did it, and he asked us for money. It was a good time.
Well, that sounds very Portland. Yeah. I'm ready to get out of here. You got anything else?
No, I think I'm also ready to get out of here. I need to rest my back, and I got a couple more posts I need to make once I sign back in as Cheese Dreams 69.
All right, well, let's thank some patrons.
Yeah, we should do that
before we're officially out of here. And I didn't have it pulled up because I'm not doing my job, because why would I? Things and stuff, filling dead air, trying not to have dead air.
One of the reasons that you forgot to have it pulled up, in your defense, is that I made you go to Reddit.
Yeah, you did put me on tilt.
You kind of mentally checked out the moment I did that. I could see it in your eyes. You were just like, all right, I accept that this is the end of it all.
All right. So we'll thank our associate producers, Andy, Sindra, Jacob, and the Salty Sea Cat. Our executive producers, Anna, Blaze Storm, valued member of the Patreon, Dom Lance, good thrust, Matt Two Tokes, Pox on us, Vintox18, hashtag help make patron reads fun, Philip, Rich, and Sergeant Swanson. I know. If you are interested in becoming a member of our Patreon, go to patreon.com/fleshandpod. Link is in the show notes. There are 6 tiers to choose from. Any paid tier will get you into FAP After Dark, which we'll be doing this week, actually. We'll be doing it on Thursday, the 3rd of October. So
Thursday.
That's
Come
the
to
one.
After Dark to hear stories from Greg and his dysfunctional family.
Wow, that's actually true. But yeah, do that. Sounds great.
Can you tell I've been in pain for like a week?
Oh,
and
yeah.
haven't been out of the house or talked to anybody. I'm a bit loose.
You're
not
a
gonna
bit
lie.
loose. If you need to contact the show, you can go to, you can find us, you send us an email at fleshandpod@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at flashpod. Best thing to do, go to the show notes of the show, scroll down, find the Discord link, click it, and join. That's the best thing you can do to talk to us and join our community of fucked up idiots. Mostly talking about the two of us when I say that. And yeah, it's free to join. Don't have to be a member of the Patreon. You can just come hang out. But if you do join the Patreon in a paid tier, you can come hang out with us live during FAP After Darks. And I guess, yeah, listening to Greg talk about his dysfunctional family this week. Darick, where can they find you?
The Discord. It's probably the best place. I am, of course, on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. I'm afraid to say it because every time I say it, something happens. So like I was just talking with somebody about how I was going to start doing some live streams, hopefully of testing leading up to Worlds, because I wanted to get more reps on like Aurora and a couple of Assassin lists. So I was like, hey, I'll stream some Talishar games, and then I hurt my back and didn't do that. So hopefully now that I'm at least up in mobile again, I can try to do that this weekend, and we'll see how it goes. But I make no promises, because tomorrow I might like lose a kidney.
Don't lose a kidney.
I have a habit of like misplacing things.
Including internal organs?
It happens to the best. Look, I'm down a gallbladder, okay?
All right. I don't know if that was misplaced specifically, but sure. Well, that's our show for this week, everybody. Thanks for being along on the ride if you made it this long. And we will talk to you next week for 149 as we go through the inexorable march to 150 and then 156. So again, thank you much for listening. We will talk to you soon. Bye.